I'm Kathleen Carroll. I'm a former attorney for the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. I started there in 2006 until I was fired in November of 2010 for blowing the whistle on a number of issues that ended up in resulting in the initiation of a state audit. It's in the executive branch. It is the entity that licenses all the public school teachers in the state of California. It is involved in approving all the teacher preparation programs in the state of California, whether it be UC, CSU. Now they have teacher preparation programs that are funded through other entities such as County Office of Education, for-profit colleges, even charter schools. Can offer teacher preparation programs. They also set the standards for this program. They do all the teacher testing, the exams that teachers need to pass in order to show subject matter competence for various types of credentials. It also looks at all the academic eligibility in order to qualify for a credential. So there's a lot of roles.
So this plays a central role in California education.
It has a major role in education, yes.
And you went to work there, and what did you begin to discover while you were working there?
Well, when I first started, I was working in essentially the education discipline division, which is the division of professional practices. I had interaction with the other divisions. You just kind of have to, as a role as an attorney, to interact with various people, depending on the allegation of misconduct. But what did strike me initially was there was a lot of relations and connections among different people. The majority of the attorneys were friends previously from another state agency, the Board of Equalization. There were a number of family members on the payroll, fathers, daughters, aunts and nieces, a lot of people.
So this raised concern about nepotism.
Nepotism and cronyism. And also there was a culture of employees afraid to speak up against management. That struck me right away. That's probably common amongst most workplaces, I would say, but this was a higher level, a much higher level. I mean, there was just this real fear of not asking questions. And when you don't ask questions, you can often make mistakes, or I found that a lot of people were on different pages, that there was a quest by management to kind of control the flow of information within the divisions, and only certain people would be allowed to be in the know on a certain piece of information and no other person. And that's not a good way or efficient way to be a manager, because that ends up creating a disaster, and it did creating a disaster in this situation.
Now, you also discovered that a lot of arrest records were being brought in to be used to investigate teachers.
Yes, the teacher applications, there was a numerous variations. They were constantly changing the questions they would ask teachers on teacher applications. And one thing that struck me is one of the questions that were asked of teachers were, have you ever been the subject of inquiry by law enforcement? Not have you ever been convicted of a misdemeanor or a felony, which is what I was required to answer when I applied to work for the state, and what most licensees are required when they're applying for either a real estate license or whatever. It was much broader than that, and I would say an invasion of privacy. There is a California appellate court decision, which is the Central Valley Chapter 7th versus Younger, and Younger was an attorney general at the time, and it focuses on the improper dissemination of criminal history, arrest, non-conviction data to agencies such as the Commission. And in addition to that case law, there is a seminal case on disciplining teachers, and that's Morrison versus State Board of Education, which basically says unless and until there's a nexus to teaching, the allegation of misconduct, you can have a lot of allegations of misconduct, but unless there's a relationship to teaching, it affects teachers, had an adverse impact on the school community, that type of thing, then they shall not investigate. And there's even an education code that codifies that. That's Education Code 44339, which actually says the commission is even supposed to have regulations to inform the teachers along with their application package of all the offenses that they shall not investigate. Well, that has not been done while I was there, but I have learned from other employees that that used to be done.
So you're an attorney there. You're there to try to
was an attorney.
to enforce the laws,
Yes.
to have a proper administration of this department. And you discover that, in fact, there are serious problems as far as the enforcement of the law and as far as certifying teachers and investigating teachers. So then you began to question why this was happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's too many examples to talk about here, but the Assistant General Counsel, who I believe is no longer at the agency, has just retired. He would walk the halls and basically say, we're the government. We could do whatever we want. We can interpret the law whatever whatever way we want. We're the government. And unfortunately, in administrative proceedings, which teachers have to go through if they want to appeal a recommendation by the commission, it's a lengthy process. And there is a lot of discretion given to a governmental agency. But unfortunately, when you have a governmental agency just blatantly violating the law, I mean, then all rights are just due process rights, all rights altogether are just being thrown out. And it'd be very hard for a teacher. The ed code is like reading, Plato. It's just, it's not very, very simple to read. It's cut and paste. If you read one section, you have to read maybe 3 other sections to understand what the law really stands for. Then there's a lot of non-published decisions, administrative decisions that you would need to be aware of. It's very convoluted.
And you then began to find out about certain relationships that the management of this commission had.
Yes.
What were they?
Oh, there's so many. Like I said, the attorneys were all coming from the State Board of Equalization. One of our committee of credentials person on the committee, his wife is on the payroll. There was a lot of connections with commission appointments and committee appointments. Dick Ackerman, our former state senator, Dick Ackerman, appointed a person on the commission, or recommended, I should say. He's not in a position to appoint, that's the governor, but he recommended Carol McInerney for the commission. He also recommended Barbara Kloponen. There was a lot of patterns that I was seeing. I didn't see that while I was working there, I should say. As the backlog and the massive documents, and I'm talking about thousands of documents, where the media just focused on the really serious bad cases. The majority of cases that you see from the audit report get closed. Well, I submit that a majority of those shouldn't have been opened in the first place, and they were concerned about showing numbers so they can get more funding and create this empire.
And how much money are they getting?
They were at one point, the budget was $53 million. It's not as significant, the budget that they get. It's a relatively small agency of about 160 employees. What's more significant is the money they control in approving of funding, like for teacher preparation money. And I don't have those figures, but those figures are definitely outweigh the annual budget of. And the funding, it's specially funded. So the funding comes in from teachers. The application fees, the renewal fees, all that money pays our salaries. And yet, from what I observed, they treated teachers like enemies,
and
not stakeholders.
And you also discovered that the commission was making money, giving money to charter schools, that people that they knew or.
Yeah, the chair of the commission is a co-founder of Natomas Charter School in Sacramento. And She's also on the board of directors of ABCTE. I mean, I can go on and on.
What is ABC?
It's the American Board of Certification of Teacher Excellence, which is a euphemism for they're basically a for-profit teacher preparation business. They have started in a number of states. They haven't been approved here in the state of California yet, but if you go on their website and you go to various links, you will see Dr. Ting's son on the board of directors, and you'll also see the fact that they have financial aid. It's basically a quickie way to get qualified or certified for a teaching credential. They say it's about two grand, and I'm sure CSU and UC is a lot higher than $2,000. So they're hoping to appeal to the masses that this is this quickie way to crank out teachers. Lord only knows what their standards are. And they also have loans, and with interest, of course, and you mailing these forms to this address in Washington, D.C. So I don't know if it's who it's being run by, to be honest. I have to keep looking into it. But what's serious for me is this whole privatization agenda. A governmental entity, any governmental official under the Political Reform Act is not supposed to use their position to move a political agenda. And privatization is a political agenda. Now, charter school laws are in effect. There's a lot of laws coming and going. But from what I've seen, and studies I've seen, they're not working. You know, maybe someone out there had well intention, we hope so, as opposed to just making profit. But in Sacramento, I've seen this, a former commissioner, Margaret Fortune, went before the Sacramento County Office of Ed to get approved for a county-wide charter school chain, when we had two school districts in the district on the brink of bankruptcy, and that's Natomas Unified and Elk Grove Unified. And there were and it was a huge turnout. It went to almost 2 a.m. I was at the meeting, and I was just completely shocked by this. First of all, Miss Fortune has no teaching credential. That means if you don't have a teaching credential, you don't have an administrative services credential, and you need an administrative service credential to be an administrator of a school. So she has literally no training in running a classroom, let alone running a school. She had for 6 months some school down near the Bakersfield area, and yet the County Office of Ed magically, as districts are on the brink of bankruptcy, gave her money and approved her for a county-wide charter school chain. It was shocking to me, just absolutely shocking. Because this funding is going to compete with funding in the county, it's districts that are in the county, traditional public schools. So you hear a lot about, oh, well, our public school systems, they're just horrible, they're just falling apart. Well, they're purposely being dismantled. I mean, if you have other types of systems out there that are competing for the same funds, I mean, you're setting up a system to destroy itself. And also, you have this issue where, if charter schools have such a great pedagogy out there, and one would hope that they have, because so much funding, I mean, billions have been poured into them, then why not use it in the traditional public schools that exist and save money as opposed to building more charter schools? Let's use it. Let's use it to help all children. But they're not doing that because the real agenda is for profit. And that's, to me, very sad, because public education is at the heart of our democracy. Without an education, people are not going to have a right to choose what they want to be later in life, or make a difference, or know who to vote for. I mean, just the basic liberties that we all fought for in the beginning of our country.
So you discovered that this commission management that you were working for was very much integrated into the plans for privatization.
Well, I'm still putting those dots together.
But there's a connection. There are many
but I
connections
have
that you
found
discovered.
many connections, because what happened to me just didn't make sense. Mm-hmm. I was pulled out of my workplace at 3:30 in the afternoon, right in the middle of a state audit. I knew it was a massive backlog, and what I was seeing did not make sense. To me, it wasn't an accident. I saw that they were so animus towards teachers, considered them not stakeholders, even though they funded our budget and our salaries. They treated them as outsiders. And even they weren't polite to them on the phone. They were, if someone had some old conviction that they couldn't get paperwork on, and they knew that we couldn't get paperwork on, they just send the person back a letter to make them wait. Well, if they wait and they don't get their app granted, they're not going to get a job. And this happened time and time again. It was very sad.
And what was the result of that for teachers in California?
They probably lost, money. They could have lost their homes. I mean, I didn't track these teachers. I mean, my job was, try to comply with the law, which I think they didn't want to do. And they saw me as, kind of questioning things. They want people who don't ask questions. Because when you ask questions and you stay at home and you're looking at things and they don't make sense and you come back in and you ask questions, they want to shut you down. And unfortunately, it just came to a head. And
now, how did they start to go after you when you began to question the procedures?
Well, this happened kind of at the height of the nursing board scandal, which was July 2009. Arnold Schwarzenegger essentially cleaned house over there. So right after that, one of our commissioners asked our general counsel, Mary Armstrong, given what happened with the nursing board, do we also have a backlog? And she said initially, no. Well, we have little backlogs at any given time, but for mandatories, we can act immediately, and we hope to never get in the situation that the nursing board got into. Well, that turned out to be a lie. I mean, the month before, she went to the executive director to get approval to hire 3 student assistants, not 1, not 2, but 3, talks to him about the backlog. She doesn't mention that in the commission meeting. This is open session, so this is not closed session where she's going to claim, well, there's privilege or anything. The assistant general counsel, they hire this private investigator who basically tried to go after me, asked private questions about me, questions that had nothing to do with the processing of discipline documents. It was just...
What kind of questions did he ask you?
Elizabeth Eisen, she was asking other employees whether I was married, whether I had children. They went on for 24 pages bashing me. I mean, there were not questions about what she was supposed to be hired for, and she was given state funds for, teacher money, to look into what's going on here. They were trying to go after me. She was a hatchet person. And I hope someday that she will be investigated herself, because it wasn't right what she did.
So basically...
She lied too in her report. She claimed she called people that she didn't call. She picked and chose. Some of the employees actually came forward.
And what was her position? What was her job?
She was hired as a private attorney to investigate my allegations. This is before the state audit. This is months before the state audit. They don't even know that I have now already called up the state audit's office. I've gone and talked to the state bar. I'm trying to get my ducks in a row, making sure that I'm doing everything right. And I'm now going to Senator Steinberg's office. I mean, I'm just full steam ahead. I don't really care what she's doing, because I know that this is seriously wrong. Employees are coming to me with fear in their face, saying, oh my God, they're doing this today. They're trying to shred documents. They're, a lot of people are just going to get lucky. We have no idea. They're not going to order incident reports. I mean, it was a mess. It was total chaos. I went into Senator Steinberg's office saying, we don't have managers. I mean, it's literally bad. And they laughed at me too, but now they realize I was right.
So who was running this?
No one. No one. The commissioners have no idea how the discipline process works. They have no idea who is reviewing the documents. It was student assistants. I mean, the backlog was so bad. One 22-year-old student assistant in a community college who's working part-time was measuring a stack of papers with a ruler to estimate how bad it was, even though they've spent a lot of money on a computer system that was supposed to give that information to us. We didn't have a computer system that tracked data.
So who was doing oversight on this agency?
No one. There is no oversight. And that's the main problem. That they were just running amok. They were used to just doing whatever they want, including violating Morrison, including violating teacher due process, violating laws right and left, and getting away with it. No one questioned them. The audit report, actually, they came up with this number kind of out of the air. This backlog included 12,600. The auditor never independently verified what the actual magnitude was. And what was concerning to me is they never verified the number of school district reports that came in. But what was very telling is in the audit report on page 75, Appendix A, it claims that over a 3-year period, approximately 300,000 documents came in to the division. That's about 100,000 a year. That's not 12,000. So what happened to those documents? I know now from hearing from employees, they're still working on those. They told the legislature, they told everyone, the auditor, the backlog was cleaned up. It wasn't.
So this agency is totally out of control.
It's yeah.
And so you went to Steinberg.
Yeah.
Assembly Leader Steinberg.
Senator Pro Tem.
Senator Pro Tem. And you talked to him about what was going on.
I didn't talk to
Or
him. I talked to his district director initially, then I talked to his chief of staff, then I talked to a number of other people that work with him.
This is before you were terminated or after you were terminated?
Before I was terminated.
Now,
before the audit even got granted. They have to go through a process. This is what I was told. Now I know a little bit more information, but when I called the auditor's office, I was told it sounds like a program audit. Yeah, I'm telling them what I'm describing, what I'm witnessing. I don't know any better. Okay, and what do I do if it's a program on it? They said, well, that can't be requested by me. I have to go through a legislator to do that. I said, okay. So I have 2 legislators, an assembly person and a senator. I just picked my senator. It happens to be Senator Steinberg. So I didn't go to him for a particular reason. He's just my senator. I live in Senate District 6 in Sacramento, and he's my senator.
But then you discover that he is in favor of privatization?
Well, I haven't put all the dots together, but some things did happen in the course of this audit getting requested and granted. It was, I drafted a letter, and it was very detailed. I found out much later, after I'm terminated, that letter got changed in a significant way. Not in a major way, but it's significant enough that it changed the scope of the audit. In addition to that,
how was it changed?
I wanted them, the auditors, not to rely on the information that was being asserted from the management at CTC, obviously. I wanted them to rely on independent verification from the individuals sending in documents to the agency, such as school districts and the Department of Justice. Those are the 2 big ones. And I had to keep repeating myself with the auditors, not realizing that Senator Steinberg's staff, or him, changed the letter in a significant way, that was no longer the case. And they changed it to the documents that CTC processed, as opposed to my language was how many documents were sent in by school districts of the state of California, sent in by Department of Justice. I mean, I have my original letter on my computer still.
So you discovered that they changed what you felt and appears to be a better way of examining whether they
Well,
were
it'll be an
problems.
independent verification and not trusting the management that I'm telling them I think there's some wrongdoing going on here. Our general counsel lied to our commission. They're having
What did she
backdoor
say?
meetings.
How did the general counsel lie to the commission?
She did not be forthcoming about how serious the documents were in the thousands and thousands and
They were trying
thousands.
to do damage control.
Damage control. But I mean, as an attorney, you have to be honest to your client. I mean, that's just a bar rule. I mean, that's just there's an ethical rule, but there's also, a bar rule. You absolutely, if your client asks you a question, you have to be truthful.
And if you aren't?
You can get subject to penalty by the bar.
So you were terminated. And when did that happen?
I was taken out of the agency at 3:30 September 27, 2010, and I was put on paid administrative leave for almost 2 months. And I found out now that that was not legal.
And what were you put on administrative leave for?
They said I was discourteous, insubordinate, contentious, a whole litany of things. And they gave examples. They said I demanded a person to stay late to work on a settlement agreement. That was not true. This person actually bosses everyone around in the agency, so I certainly wouldn't be able to boss her around. She bosses me around. But it was just a lot of bogus, allegations to discredit me, everything in the kitchen sink to throw mud at me, to kind of, skirt away from the focus being on them. And it was hard. And then I received I was told within 30 days I was going to get a mandatory interview so I can rebut the allegations made against me. That never happened. And just one day, ding dong, FedEx at the door, here's your dismissal. Yeah, I laugh, but at the time I was quite upset.
But I mean, you need health care.
Yeah, I'm a heart transplant recipient. In fact, that's one of the things that was told to this independent investigator, which is a HIPAA violation and an invasion of my privacy. They had no right telling her anything about my health condition because, first of all, it's not even relevant to why she was hired. And again, she's using public funds. So this is an improper use of public funds.
And is Senator Steinberg aware of this?
Yes.
And he called for an investigation and prosecution by the Attorney General of California?
Not that I'm aware of. He did write a letter on my behalf when he found out that I was terminated. He was in budget negotiations that particular evening, and his district director came out of the budget negotiations and said he was drafting a letter on my behalf. It was a nice letter. But, keep in mind, and this is serious, commission is part of the executive branch. The legislature really has no jurisdiction over them.
So we're talking about Governor Brown.
Yes, but at the time it was still Schwarzenegger until Governor Brown got sworn in January.
Now, after Governor Brown was sworn in, did you get in touch with him, or did you try to meet with him at his office?
I did put an email in, and I didn't get really any response.
So no one from Governor Brown's office contacted you and said...
They contacted Darrell Steinberg's chief of staff, who contacted me. And basically, at the time, I was very upset. I maybe shouldn't go into specifics about, what was said, but essentially, I was wondering why these individuals were still working there. In fact, Mary Armstrong is still working there today, even though the audit report was released April 7th. And I was told, well, these people, you must understand, it was a very condescending email, you must understand as an attorney, these people are entitled to due process. And of course, my jaw drops. I'm like, yeah, well, I was probably entitled to a due process as well, and I didn't get it. I was hauled out, no due process, no rebuttal allowed, and now I'm on unemployment. And actually, it's not true about Mary Armstrong. She's a CEA-4, and that means she's at will, and she isn't entitled to civil service protections.
So Governor Brown, as the chief administrative officer in California, he's in charge of this agency, had the responsibility to make sure that the officers in these agencies are not violating state law.
Yeah.
And
I've asked to meet with Ricardo Lara. I've asked to meet with JLAC. I've asked to meet with Governor Brown to go over, because really any legislator, they have to rely on staff. I mean, I'm not impractical in thinking that any legislator or any governmental official out there can know the entire ed code, the entire government code. They can't. And not just knowing the code, but how it's being put into practice. But I'm free. I was on the inside as an attorney. I witnessed their policies and procedures, how they usurped the legislative authority, how they did not apply how they skirted the education code, the statutes, and how they wrote policy to give them greater authority than what statutes allowed. And they can't get that information from anyone else. I mean, they're not going to be willing to disclose that to them. So I'm willing to sit down and talk to someone. They could just say, well, that's nice, Miss Carroll, but we're going to go in a different direction, and that's fine. But I would think anyone smart enough would be willing to take me on, sit down with me, listen to what I have to say, what my knowledge is, and then go from there in whatever changes they want to make. But that just hasn't happened. I know he's had charter schools in Oakland, and I have heard things about him and O'Connell and taking over Oakland Unified. Um, I think we don't have to talk about that issue. I think I am capable of sitting down with him and focusing squarely on the Commission on Teacher Credentialing and moving forward without violating the law, so he shouldn't be afraid.
He's in charge of this agency.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's serious charges. There's an audit that shows serious.
It didn't show everything.
But it showed serious systemic problems.
Yes.
There are charges that they're flagrant violations of the law, arrest records being received.
Yeah,
illegally.
There's unlawful delegation of authority that the auditor talked about, but not all the specific laws that they're violating. That did not come out of the audit.
What are the specific laws that they're violating?
44339 is being violated.
So.
That's the law that requires them to give notice to teachers of all the offenses that shall not be investigated that are not related to teaching. They don't do it. There's no reg. They're required to set forth a reg and rulemaking. They're required to, all teacher applications are supposed to have all the offenses that they're not going to investigate. They don't do it.
And you've told them that?
Yes.
You've told them that they are not.
I've emailed JLAC, the very ed code, and how they're violating it.
And what's the response?
There has been zero.
You also discovered that this is going on nationally.
Yes.
Why don't you talk about that?
It's very, very scary, and it's very, very sad. When my case was publicized, of course, the media did unfortunately focus on bashing teachers. Now, I can say, having been an attorney at this agency, there's only a handful of teachers that were getting disciplined. License sanctions. There were thousands of teachers where the cases were closed, and like I said, potentially shouldn't have been opened in the first place. So there's a lot of good teachers out there. There's a very small, there's like less than 1% of the 300,000 teachers in the state of California that ever get a license sanction. So that I want to put out there first of all. And it's unfortunate that the media tends to keep focusing on bad teachers. And it may be that, protecting kids, so the focus needs to be on kids. So in shifting to privatization, there are studies that have been out there that show that charter schools really don't fare any better than the traditional public schools. The movement to privatize public education, as you're aware, is probably going on forever. But this charter school phenomena really happened in the 90s. And as I was on paid leave, and even after that, I started thinking something's not right here. I witnessed a lot of closed door meetings. They were shredding documents. Something's much more than what the audit report was reporting. And I did a lot of links to various individuals involved in the charter school movement. People that were putting money behind school board members to get elected, behind city council members to get elected, behind county office of education members, state and local governmental officials. I mean, big, big money. Ed Voice is behind this. Education Alliance is behind this. And then you look at the people who are on their board of directors. Reed Hastings. Reed Hastings was on the board at Microsoft. I don't know if he still is. So he works, and who's on Microsoft? Bill Gates. I'm sitting at a coffee shop, and who should walk in but Michelle Rhee. I hear her talking about her Broad Academy, and she's recruiting people to become superintendents. And yet, as an attorney, I started researching the charter schools, and although a lot of them say their core subject teachers are NCLB highly qualified, they're not, because I look them up. I know what to look for, and they're not qualified. And
So has there been any criminal prosecution of these charter school superintendents and corporations that are illegally
there was a chain in 2004, and it was actually quoted in Diane Ravitch's book, The American Rise and Fall of the American Public School System. I can't remember the name of the individual. He was a businessman. He was involved in the insurance industry as well. He basically took hundreds of millions of dollars from the state of California to operate charter school chains, and then left the state and left all the kids without education. They had to be moved and integrated back into many different school districts, and that's a harm to kids. So if the focus should be on kids, which they want it to be, let's make it on kids. This isn't good for kids, because kids are witnessing teachers being illegally harassed. I've heard so many stories. They're witnessing teachers being hauled out in handcuffs and being set up. I mean, I've seen, falsification of test score issues. There's just a massive amount of fraudulent stuff going on, and this is not going to help kids. It's just not. And all for the sake of profit. There's certain things that you can have in a free market society, and competition may weed it all out, and it's going to be great for our economy. Public education is just not one of them. Teachers aren't a commodity. They're human beings. Kids aren't commodities. They're human beings. And public education, a quality public education, has to be done by quality trained professionals. And unfortunately, in this push to privatize and expand charters, teachers are not at the table. And they're the ones with the solutions, because they're in there 8, 10, 12 hours a day with these kids, not these broad people. Not these business people who are coming in and trying to be superintendents. Even the commission had a superintendent that was kicked out of a school district, and he was fired. And what does the CTC do? They hire him as executive director. This is the mentality. There's a double standard for school administrators versus teachers, and that has to stop. There's no accountability for superintendents. None at all.
And you say
you don't have to be licensed.
Cosme, you're making noise. I'm trying to record this. Yeah, all this noise is getting. But you're saying that Michelle Rhee.
She has no teaching background except for Teach for America. It's like a Peace Corps for teachers. I mean, you go in for a minimal amount of time and then you're out. And now she's basically being given tons of money by, the Broad Foundation. She's on the board of the Broad Foundation, and she's going around the country recruiting people to become superintendents to go in there and slash and burn. I mean, Alan Burson, who is the superintendent of San Diego City Schools, he went in and terrorized teachers. Well, he was the chair of the commission of teacher credentialing. I mean, this was planned for quite some time, and it's now very well organized. It's backed by huge corporations like Walmart, AT&T.
And how is Walmart and AT&T backing this?
They're funding businesses like these for-profit teacher preparation programs. They're sponsoring these type of privatization organizations that Ting Sun's on the board of.
And what are these corporations called again?
The ABCTE, which is the American Board for Certification for Teacher Excellence. And they're essentially a for-profit teacher certification company that they want to be nationwide. They probably want to eventually license teachers. They want everything to be privatized. And they're making money. There's tons of states, and there's a link of preferred employers. And in California, although that program's not approved in California yet, there's 2 links, and they're both charter schools. So when these people go through this cheapy certification program to become a teacher and submit their forms to some place in Washington, D.C., they come out, certified, they look at their list of preferred employers and they go into these charter schools and they're trying to expand and expand and expand.
And
And AT&T is listed as a sponsor of this.
And why are these companies pushing this?
It's big business. It's for profit. I mean, they think education is the next best thing to, sliced bread. I mean, it's big business. In a down economy, for-profit colleges are making money. And for-profit colleges and charter schools are all about the same thing. Quick way to make money. They want education to fund the economy. They want it to be business. They want a business model for education, not the current free public education that's guaranteed in our Constitution. It's not guaranteed in the federal Constitution, but it is in our state Constitution.
So are they violating the state Constitution by what they're doing?
Well, there are laws that allow for charter schools, and there's currently an assembly bill in the state of California. It's Assembly Bill 401, authored by Tom Amiano, Assembly Member Amiano, and he is proposing to put a cap on the number of charter schools in the state by 2017, which is not that far away. Currently, we have, by various calculations, 912 charter schools, but I don't know how they're counting the chain, so I don't know if that number is accurate. And they have looked at how charter schools are expanding and how that expansion is starting to increase. And so his bill proposes a number of things. One of the big things is a cap to 1,450 in this state by 2017. He also initially proposed for various accountability language, which included report by the Legislative Analyst's Office as to the efficacy of the charter school approach. Unfortunately, that language has been deleted, and I don't know by whom.
And you were at a hearing. Why don't you talk about the hearing that was held by the state legislature, a joint legislative hearing?
Yeah, there was the Joint Legislative Audit Committee is the same committee of legislators made up of assembly members and senators that granted the audit. The same group was not the same group that met this year, and there's another hearing coming up on July 13th.
You haven't been invited to that.
I haven't been invited as being on the agenda, but of course I could go and speak at the end, but I've asked to be on the agenda.
Now, what happened at that hearing that was held?
Well, basically the auditor spoke for quite a long time, and then the three individuals from the commission spoke. That's the chair of the commission, Ting Sun, Dale Jansen, and Mary Armstrong. And Dale Jansen really doesn't know how the discipline division works. He's also gone. So he's no longer working at the commission. And so they actually had a lot more time to speak than I did. Unfortunately, I was told I was going to get 10 minutes to speak, and I kind of wasted time in kind of thanking people. I wanted to be somewhat diplomatic. I wish I kind of, now thinking back, that I went in and said, but this still exists and that still exists, and they're violating this and they're violating that. But in those type of hearings, two legislators spent a lot of time thanking me, and I wasn't going to come back and start saying, but this is wrong and that is wrong. I've invited them to meet with me and sit down one-on-one. It doesn't have to be in a public forum such as a hearing, and it's free.
Have any of them talked to you extensively about?
No, they have not.
Did any of these legislators ask any questions of you?
No.
About your report?
No.
Were you surprised about that?
Yes, very surprised.
Why do you think that they had no questions of the key witness who brought about the actual hearing?
I think they have some agenda, and they have predetermined what they're going to do. I don't really know what that is. And they don't necessarily want me to ruffle those predetermined feathers, is what I can surmise by that.
You were shocked at that?
I was shocked. Yeah, I thought that, I actually think I don't recall now, but I think I said something to the effect, I'm sure you're going to have questions for me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. But no one had any. I mean, I think the one legislator just thanked me, and that was about it.
And the criminal violations by the management of this commission, the illegal activity they're involved in, have there been any legal actions taken by Attorney General Kamala Harris to investigate if there are violations of the state law, state constitution?
No, not that I'm aware of.
But why wouldn't they make an investigation since there's serious systemic?
I mean, I don't know if they have or have not. If and maybe they have talked to her and met with her. She was copied on the audit report, and they just haven't privied me to that information. I mean, I just don't know that.
What is the solution?
There needs to be a major overhaul. I mean, there was no oversight. If this entity is going to continue, and I think it does have important roles, I think there needs to be teacher input. The teachers really just didn't have any input.
Were there any teachers on this commission?
Not very many. It was very pro management, on the committee. They would pick and choose who were the committee members. They didn't widely advertise in the paper. They were kind of friends of management. One committee member, actually his wife, like I said, was on the payroll. Same with the commissioners, all pro-management. It was, the deck was stacked against the teachers, and that's just not fair. They are the major stakeholder. It's their funds that keep us alive. And so they should be sitting at the table and helping and finding solutions. That's the only way there's going to be a betterment of this entity.
So you're saying the privatizers, those people who were supportive of privatization, are actually running this commission?
There are some on the commission,
and
yes.
Who are they?
Ting Sun, she is a long time, 18, 19, maybe 20 years now, a long-time charter school advocate, and like I said, a founder of a charter school. She's on several board of directors. She's a board member of this, nationwide organization, for-profit teacher certification. She's an administrator at her own school. She's the chair of the commission. She's on the board of Golden One, which has dealings with the state. I mean, it just on and on.
Who are the others?
Carolyn McInerney. The only reason I know that she is for this movement is Ed Voice is a huge advocate, and they're one of the largest. They were considered by the Fair Political Practice Commission to be one of the top 5 campaign contributors in the state. So it's huge. And they were investigating their use of independent expenditures, but I followed a recall election in Capistrano Unified. And as I was doing that, I looked at various endorsements, and I saw Carolyn McInerney's name listed with Ed Voice and Dick Ackerman. Dick Ackerman recommended her, recommended one of our committee members, and they were all endorsing this one woman to be on their school board, which was Anna Bryson. And they're all putting money behind these privatizers. That's what's going on, and it's very incestuous. I mean, it's school boards, city council, it's local state governmental officials. I mean, it's huge. And after our horrible Dred Scott case of Citizens United, governmental officials have catered to corporations because they were considered citizens for purposes of campaigning.
Now, the Assembly Leader, John Perez, supported this Race to the Top bill, which would encourage more privatization. Darrell Steinberg was a supporter of Gloria Romero, who was in favor of privatization. No, Gloria Romero. He gave money to her campaign, her election campaign. How are you going to fight privatization when the officials, the top state, say Democratic officials, are actually have financial relations and political support for privatization?
It has to be done with money because there's a lot of money, and we're talking a lot of money behind this, and there has to be an organized effort. There's a very well-oiled machine that's working to expand charter schools and to put the public education system as a commodity in the free market. And that would just be a horrible destruction at the heart of our democracy. I mean, it basically wipe out the ability for low-income people to get a quality, good education.
And what is the response of the California Teachers Association and the California Federation of Teachers to your report and your concerns about the systemic corruption in the California Teacher Credentialing?
Well, I don't know if I've actually spoke about the systemic corruption, and although I haven't been allowed to, the media is kind of focused on the bad teachers. So I haven't really had a public opportunity to speak out about what I have witnessed and what my research has shown as to what's going on behind the scenes. So they seem to be focused on one thing, and that's bad teachers. And I don't know what to make about that.
What should these unions do about it?
The unions are, some of the unions now are backing Amiano's bill, which was surprising to me as LAU. Well, it shouldn't be surprising, but I'm always surprised every time I look at something else. But this AB 401 bill is being opposed by LAUSD, which is the largest school district in the state. It's actually the second largest school district in the country, second only to New York City Public Schools. They're opposing the bill. They're opposing the bill. The whole argument behind charter schools, and the only, maybe plausible argument is that smaller class sizes, okay? Who wouldn't want smaller class sizes and choice? But the problem is they're being run by people who have no training. They've never been through a teacher credential program. They have no training as an administrator. They're being run, and some of these boards have parents and students on the boards. I mean, they're being run by non-experienced individuals.
And the superintendent of Los Angeles, the new superintendent?
Mr. Deasy. I mean, again, we're talking about superintendents are being strategically placed by Mr. Broad and Mr. Gates. It's just blatant at this point. He doesn't have any background that I know of as a teacher, but he doesn't have any teaching credential that I know of.
So he couldn't actually teach students in Los Angeles?
Well, I don't think he does. I mean, I think I tried to look him up, and I think I saw a certificate of clearance, but the name could be common. I don't have a social security number or anything. I think I read somewhere that he's never taught in a classroom.
Do you think that should be a requirement?
I think there should be a requirement that superintendents have some accountability. In California, currently, they do not have any accountability. They're buddies with school board trustees, and the school board trustees are not working to help the school district. They're working for the agenda. They're working for the money. They're getting elected by the Broad, Gates, Ed Voice PACs. So there's a conflict. They should be helping the money and the funds of the school district. They're the trustees of the funds, the public funds that go to the school district, but instead they're supporting individuals to dismantle, from what I see and what I've read about. And that's it's massive what's happening, and the stories I've heard is just incredibly sad. I don't want to cry, but teachers threatened with violence, being set up for fraudulent allegations by their own students, being told by administrators to say that Mr. So-and-so threw objects at me when Mr. So-and-so didn't. Just horrible stories of illegal harassment, fraudulent allegations, and these people's livelihoods have been destroyed. I talked to one individual who knew the gentleman that jumped off the bridge in LA, and now he's being targeted. And I've talked to people all up and down the state, and the stories are unreal. I mean, I've been through a lot myself, but nothing compared to some of these teachers who are really threatened with violence in some instances. One woman was threatened by a principal that he was going to punch her teeth in. Yeah.
And what happened to the principal?
I don't think anything. She even called the police, and the police wouldn't do anything.
And there've been bullying at your agency. What's gone on at that agency against the employees?
I think I was kept out of the loop a lot, but from what I've been told by employees, you know, they get threatened, they get ostracized, they are given either too much work, so they're drowning, or taken away and being put in a corner, and in some instances employees are told not to talk to them, and just ostracizing, stressful work assignments, or given one assignment and then a week later, an assignment that may take 2 weeks, and then take it away in 3 days and give another assignment, and just constantly pound them with stress. And it's just horrible.
Is that a reign of terror going on at that agency?
Yes, I would unfortunately call it that. It's horrible. And I hope that there are changes. There's been some changes. I don't know what, holds for...
Armstrong is still there, isn't she?
She's still there, but she's announced that she's stepping down upon her replacement. It hasn't been very quick. I know one woman used to work for MALDEF. I know...
What is MALDEF?
I think that's an organization that is an advocate for Native Americans, isn't it? And the other gentleman, I can't remember his name, I want to say his last name was Cooney. He's a businessman from down in Santa Barbara area.
But he hasn't appointed any labor people or union or consumer people?
No.
Does that bother you?
Yeah, it does. It's very lopsided. It's been that way for a very long time. Very long time.
It seems like he hasn't got the message yet, Governor Brown.
Maybe he has his own agenda. I don't know. He appoints, and then I believe they go through. I think they have 12 months, and then the Senate confirms, and so.
So what should people in California do about this situation?
They have to do something. The first thing is education. There needs to be constant workshops. People need to communicate with one another about what's really going on. People need to join and share information. And once you have knowledge, like when you have a good education, knowledge is power. And I think with that, people can start organizing, and we still have a voice in the local and state governments, even though we don't have a voice at the presidential level. We still have a voice. Our local and leaders and our state officials are nominated by the popular vote. And yes, money's behind it, but we gotta try to organize and fundraise and make sure our voice is heard, because we can't stand for this. It's destroying our democracy.